Welcome to Hometown Heroes, and this is our year-end podcast.
Woohoo!
Uh,
We made it through another year,
a
Rick.
whole year. And Mary, can you believe that it was in July of 2022 when
Mm.
we did our first podcast down at Fort Worth Memories Museum with Larry O'Neill? And now in 2026, we're going to celebrate our fourth anniversary
Wow.
of the podcast. We've already done over 170 episodes.
Wow. No, I didn't realize that. It's just time flies, Time flies when you're having fun.
And I keep a list of a journal of all the people that we've had on. And we've had some great people on. And we're going to have more great people and a lot of great organizations that
Mhm.
help veterans and first responders. And it's not even veterans and first responders, but we had the swim coach from TCU, Richard Sumbusma. I
Yeah,
have a hard
easier
time.
for you than me. I can't say
Yeah,
that either.
but I mean, he was a hero because here's a guy that came from out in West Texas and became the swim coach for TCU, and we've had some other educators and other people that are
Mhm.
out there in the community, and they are hometown heroes too. So
Mhm.
uh,
Yep.
it's certainly been a journey,
It
and
has. It has. And we've developed some great relationships with some really great people too. And great leaders, we've been fortunate that we know and have been able to have conversations with people that have led the troops and really taking great care of them.
yeah, and we always seem to have a really great relationship with the skipper at the base.
He is really great, and I know he was really happy that Navy won that game, no matter how close it was.
Yeah,
But I usually text him, and I didn't this time, but I usually text him when they win to say, "Hey, congratulations!" But you go to the base before the game, and there's always something up on the board, the electronic welcome board about the game coming up, and then after the game, there's always another message. But they kind of have a lot of fun with it. But Captain Hofstadler is he's a great family man. Got a big family, and we've met his, I think, his oldest son has been at several events that we've been at, and you can see how well he does with his own family even, but everybody that interacts with him just loves him because he really is a great leader. He really takes great care of his people on that base. I've never heard a bad word about him, and it's just been a pleasure to have him because if he doesn't have something going on the Friday of a lunch that he can break away, he comes to our luncheons as often as he can, and he has to sneak out sometimes if he has to be somewhere because everybody wants to stop and talk to him. All the veterans absolutely love seeing him. Same thing with General Hansen. He'll come in his flight suit and they love it. The veterans love that so much. And
and then they kind of get irritated. Something. Well, who's that two-star general that comes in here? Why didn't you introduce him? Well, it's just Fitch. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. So I try to make sure to make it a point because I have heard that a time or two. And I know he doesn't want an attention. And like when I tell him to come sit up front, he's like, no, no, I can sit back here. I'm like, no, come on. Because I know what I'm going to hear from people. They just love to hear from him. Just like last month, we had the first sergeants from the 301st came out, and as they do usually once or twice a year, and help serve the lunch. And they were out and they're in their uniforms, and the people, the veterans, people, I don't think people always understand how much it means to them to interact with people that are currently serving, because if they served in Korea or Vietnam, um, they want to hear, they want to know what's going on today. And when I was in the Navy or when I was in the Air Force, this is and then you get that whole other conversation, and it's so cool. It's so cool to watch that. These people were the people before you and the trailblazers, and they did all this before you, and now they want to know what you're doing and how you're fighting wars because this is how they did it. And and the dynamic is just something to watch it unfold.
And
It's
then our
really,
veterans really appreciate those people that are currently serving. I mean, they
yes,
really have a love for them. And
they do. It's phenomenal. And we have several of them that come every Friday that we have a lunch, and they come. And they come in their civilian clothes, and they're just another roll call member. So it's not just veterans that are coming. It is currently serving that are coming to the luncheons as well. And we welcome everybody, even non-veterans. I mean, we have, a good percentage of them they're not veterans. They're either family members of a veteran, or they're just people that have a heart for veterans, and they love them and they love to hear the stories. So they come to the luncheons, and it's neat.
then there's those people that haven't served, like you said,
Mhm.
but they are such great supporters. I mean, not just being there, but they support us financially. They
Mhm.
support by going places. And one example is Melanie Throne, Dr. Throne, because
Yes.
she is there every month. She just has such a passion for veterans and first responders and military. She works closely with the base at the food pantry, and she's
Mhm.
just a lot of places. Or Lorna, she's like that.
Yeah,
She
another example. Yeah,
or
Laura is, I'm communicating with her today because one of our, Lyle Ofke, who I think he start the Fort Worth Civic Leaders Organization?
if he didn't lay the cornerstone, he's been there a long time. So
Yeah, yeah. So his birthday is coming up. So I reached out to Lorna because I didn't know what was going on with him. I hadn't heard from him in a long time. And so I reached out to Lorna, and she said, "Oh yeah, she gave me an update on him." So she keeps in contact with a lot of these veterans throughout the month. Sometimes she and her mom take them to dinner and different things. But, and then I said, well, if he's moved, do you have an address? So she got me his current address. So Lorna is really, to your point, she brings veterans. If she finds one and they can't get there on their own to the luncheon, she'll bring them with her. It's people like Melanie and Lorna that really are incredible people that are doing a lot of good out there, and they're part of multiple organizations that they're working with. But you need people like them that just have that heart for veterans.
and with Lorna, she's had such a heart for the World War II veterans. And I think about Bill McIntyre and
Mhm.
Ernie LaCroix. At one time, uh, Bill was on the west side of Brown Irving, and Ernie was on the east side of Brown Irving. And I mean, she would take Bill with her and her mother to go eat dinner. But as Ernie got, you know, where he didn't know people, she still went up there, and that was really a help for the family too. Because
Yeah.
I met his son not long ago because I introduced myself. I didn't recognize him, but he said, "My name's Ernie LaCroix." I said, "Like your dad was Ernie LaCroix?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you know." I've been around your dad a lot, but and we lost both those guys, and that's one thing that roll call, the family of roll call, uh, we lose a lot of our veterans, and this year we've lost quite a few of our older veterans. So,
Mhm.
and even some of their spouses, they
Right.
were such great supporters. But
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And when we did Ernie's I think it was his 102nd birthday, still during COVID, and Lauren and I were working together on that. She really did the majority of that legwork, and to make sure that Ernie had a great drive by. I shouldn't say drive through, drive by birthday celebration. So it does take a village. It takes a community. And when you said family, that's the way when I think about roll call is, and I tell people we're just a big family. There's just a lot of us. We're just a huge family. And if you ever come to a luncheon once, you will want to keep coming back because we don't shake hands, we hug. And
yeah,
that's just what we're a family. And if somebody has a need, we do what we can to help them as best that we can. Now we don't go out and do fundraisers. We're not going to go ask people to give money, but if they need something, they need a ride, or they need some furniture, or they need, just somebody to come visit. I had one lady reach out to me, and her dad wasn't even a member of roll call, but she had found us online and said, hey, he's new here. We'd love to get him involved and, get somebody to at least come visit him. And we've done that a few times with a few different vets where we went to visit them in home. And unfortunately, a lot of those folks don't make it very long. And that's part of why we can't get them to a luncheon. But, we've done that so many times, and we've got great volunteers that are willing to go to people's houses and visit with them, or go to the senior living facility that they're in, wherever. We've visited people in the hospital. How many times, we've done that. But it matters to them. So we're family. We're not just an organization. And, we've got anything from, we've got one guy, and I don't know that folks know this, and we don't really publicize it at the lunch because we don't want to make a big deal out of it. But we have one of our members who regularly every month brings anywhere from 3 to 8 homeless veterans with him every month. And they sit at the table together, and, they're there with us. And a lot of times it's repeat people, but he has a heart for those homeless veterans. So we have anything from the homeless to folks that are, sometimes they're not sure how they're going to get the next grocery bill paid, to folks that have plenty of money and can help out when, we need to do a food drive or whatever the case might be. So it really is a wide swath we're a very diverse, I like to say we're very diverse with all the different branches, the different ages. We've got people from every ethnic group. Even in our volunteers, look at our incredible volunteers. And you have to give a shout out. And I wish I could give you all their names, but we probably have 40 to 50 volunteers every lunch. We've got a group of young women who have been coming, 5 to 7, I think has been the highest number they've brought. But from USA Cheer. And USA Cheer, I know because my middle child was a cheerleader. I was never a cheerleader, but she was a cheerleader. And she went and competed in several of their nationals that they've put on, USA Cheer. So they're a very big cheerleading organization, and they put on big competitions. And so I knew that organization. And when those ladies, they drive from Dallas to come to Fort Worth to volunteer. They wanted to do it once to have a volunteer opportunity. And now they're bringing like 7 people every month. And they come, and they're all, they're young and they're really pretty. And they come, and now the guys are going, hey, are the cheerleaders coming today? So they love to get their picture taken with them. And those young ladies get to hear these stories and get to, experience what it's like to be around these guys. But they're loving coming. And we've got every kind of, a lot of the Daughters of the American Revolution, several of their chapters, every month they're there. The Garriottas, Jack and Margaret, they've been, I can't even tell you how long. I think they've been there as long as we've been there.
At least that long.
Yeah. And they're amazing. And Margaret is a nurse. So, we've had a couple of instances where when you have the population we have, you have the potential for somebody to need some medical care. And we've pulled Margaret in a couple of times to take the lead on that. But, and Jack, I was like, this whole raffle thing, this drawing thing that we do, it was just getting to be like, oh my goodness gracious, I need some help with this, because it's almost overwhelming the amount of stuff that people bring in to donate so that we can have this drawing. And so I said, Jack, would you help me out? So now Jack takes it, and he tells, Kim how many names he's going to need, how many items he has, and he gets the volunteers to go out, and I don't have to mess with it anymore. And it just one more thing off my plate. Shelley Gardner has donated her time and her talents to helping us with what she had just revamped our website completely. She's helping us with doing better with our social media. She's just all in all been taking care of a lot of things. When Jeff is out of town, she's been running our show at the luncheon. She has just been an incredible person. Amy Sellers and her son, they've been coming for years too. And Amy has recently stepped up to really step in and help us with getting people signed in, helping do what Kim does. And we're getting ready to have her do some other stuff for us, where we're going to try to clean up some of our database and get, addresses updated and all that kind of stuff. So that will also take a little bit of load off of me. And so we can't do it without these folks, because as you know, Rick, as you're very well aware, you were on the board of Roll Call for a little while. And you're a huge contributor as, an advisor and as our photojournalist, more or less, for Roll Call. We don't have any paid staff. So when you don't have paid staff, not a one of us, not a person on the board, nobody gets paid a penny to do what we do for Roll Call. It really boils down to, do you have some really dedicated, devoted volunteers? Because without them, there's only 7 board members, and 2 or 3 of them work, and we couldn't do it. We seriously could not do what we do if we didn't have all these volunteers. It's amazing.
And those that don't work, they work because it's like what I found out about Roll Call when I was on the board, it's like a 24/7 deal. It's like things are moving all the time. There's problems here, issues here. People are, needing this or that, but it was a very eye-opening experience to see how much work each one of the board members do. It's like, and you have to give them all credit, because they do, in all their little areas, they do so much and take care and are good stewards of the funds that are donated to Roll Call.
Yep. No doubt about it. 100% of the funds that come in go to operate the organization, to make sure that we can put on the luncheons, and we make sure that, you have to have the database and, a few things that you have to pay for. We have to pay for the lunch. We have to pay for the operating expenses, obviously, tablecloths and website and all that kind of craziness. But 100% of the donations that come into Roll Call go to operate the organization and put on the programs and take care of the veterans the way that they need to be taken care of.
And whenever you think about lunch, you think, well, I'm going to go to lunch with my buddy and I'll pay for it, Well, at Roll Call, whenever we talk about lunch, I'm going to go to lunch, but there's going to be 500 people with me and we're going to pay for it. And, to feed 500 people, that's kind of a multitude, and we don't have the loaves and fishes and all that.
No. I laugh sometimes when people say, "Oh, well, you put on a lunch," and that's kind of cool. And I said, "Yeah, there's a lot of organizations that do an annual gala or a benefit, and they'll have 200, 300, 400 people maybe at that." And I said, "We do this luncheon for 450 to 500 people every month." And, oh, by the way, nobody stands in a line. There is no line to get your food. The food is put on the table in front of the veterans. Most of the time, they don't even have to go get a drink. And if they need a refill, a volunteer is there to get them a refill. So think about what that takes. And we put that food on the table in front of them in about 10 minutes. That's how many volunteers are there every month to make that happen. It's crazy to watch.
It is. And, just thinking about the preparation of the food, having to buy the food, having to plan it all out. And we are blessed to have Brenda Linhart
Hmm.
uh, run all that,
Right.
and she's done it ever since we came to Birchmond back in about 2015 or so,
Yeah. Somewhere in
2016.
there. Yep.
And just a shout out to her, but a shout out to that church too, Birchmond Baptist Church. We couldn't do what we do if they didn't provide the facility, and
Right.
that's a lot of facility to provide. Most of the time, they set the tables, the chairs up, and
Hmm.
then you've got the heating and cooling and the kitchen and all the stuff that goes with it. So, and it's not like, and sometimes I think, it's not like they're there greeting us at the door saying, "Come on to church, come on to church." They don't,
Right.
they invited us to the church music for Christmas,
Oh,
and
that was amazing. I got
was
to go
that?
for the first time. Their Christmas program is amazing.
I think it's as good as you'd see at Bass Hall or any place
Anywhere,
else.
anywhere. I was blown away at how good that program was, and I've been trying to go for so many years. And when Brother Bob came up and was sharing with everybody at the December luncheon, and I said, "Oh man, I really been trying to do that." And he's like, "Well, you let me know when you're going to come, and I'll make sure that you have a seat." And my husband and I went, and we were both just blown away.
It's a great production,
Man,
great message.
but you're right, and they don't ask anything of our members. They don't come in and try to preach or anything else. They let us do our thing. But I think a lot of people then do find drawn themselves drawn to the church because of how welcoming it is.
And
And they
there's a
do
lot of
so
church
much at
members.
that church.
There's a lot of church members that come to roll call too. So,
Mhm. Yep, yep. And they do a lot for the community at that church and where they're located. They have folks that need help and they really do help a lot of people. So I can't say enough about them. They're just amazing. Amazing.
and then all the, you're talking about the volunteers that serve. The ladies from the DAR chapters. There's at least 8, maybe 10 of them from either the chapter here in Fort Worth or the chapter down in Granbury, and the chapter in Granbury has been a great friend at Roll Call
Right.
because they've recognized a lot of the Roll Call members at their meetings and certificates and stuff. And I have to give a shout out to Charlesy because for whatever reason she put in for me to be recognized as the veteran volunteer of the year a couple of years ago, and that was certainly a great honor to do that. And you've spoken at their groups, and
Yeah.
I've spoken at their groups.
I think I've spoken to 3 or 4 different chapters that I've been invited to come tell a little bit of my story, my service story in the Air Force, and then talk about roll call. And so it just helps them know, do I want to volunteer with this organization? And they've donated to roll call. So we have great friends, and several of them bring stuff for the drawing every month. What an amazing, it's such an amazing community. That's what the only thing I can say is it's so heartwarming as an organization, and we just can't do it without them.
And I was looking back at some pictures of roll calls luncheons this year, and you think about the support we get from the community because one month the people from West Side Cafe came down there to give us a donation.
Mhm.
And then of course we wouldn't be where we are without Paul Swartz.
Right. No
And,
doubt.
and he's got the Midas touch whenever it comes to raising money. I tell you what.
Yeah, he does. He was a great salesman when he was working, and he used that talent and still does to help us out. And Mike Reppert, who has a financial business, he came aboard to honor him. What was it? Not this year, but 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He came aboard and said, how much do you think that Paul has raised over the years? And I told him a number, and he said, if you can raise that much, I'll match it. And we exceeded what he expected, and he matched it dollar for dollar. And that was really good, because that was during, that COVID, still just not long after the whole COVID thing happened. And so many organizations were struggling, and that made a huge difference for us to be able to know that we were going to be able to get through the next year without having any problems. And Paul was, because Paul didn't know until we announced it at the luncheon, but his family knew. And so they came with him, and they hadn't done that before. So he knew something was up, but he didn't know what. And it was really special. And he still talks about it today. And we're hoping to get Mike out to a lunch. He talked to me about Mike coming out to a lunch. And I told him, you know what, he's welcome anytime. We'll always find a seat for him. But just huge supporter, Paul is.
And Paul, he's so good at building these relationships, not only with Mike, but with Owen Otto.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they met years ago at some deal, and he had Don Graves with him.
It was a gas station or something. I think it was like a Quick Trip or I don't know. It was some big thing on the highway they met.
And crazy. So, I mean, he is such a great supporter, and we visited with him at his office one day to go thank him. And he said, whenever we start this business, we want to get a certain percentage back to the community, and roll call is who we chose to help. And so, and that's a long-term, very deep relationship we have with these people.
Right.
And with these organizations and businesses. And then you think about, American Airlines and what they've done for us as far as mileage to be able to get speakers here and do other things,
Yeah.
That's a great business too. And then, we have people in the community that like the Tuggies, Matt and Jean Tuggy. Jean's a dentist, and Matt's father was a pilot, helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and they have had a passion for our veterans, and they've been funding the war stories that we have, and they also have the Smiles for Vets, and
huge program,
and it takes veterans that need extensive dental work, and it's no charge for the veteran. And they just do beautiful work and have a great office.
Yeah, and I know I was telling you, Rick, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, about one of our guys. You and I were at an event, a women's veteran luncheon out at campus, off of Campus Drive, and we stumbled upon one young female veteran, and you said, hey, I think she'd be a good candidate. So we talked to her, and she was one of the people that they helped. And then a few months ago, I was as I do at a luncheon, I'm running all over the place, and I'm going back behind in the back, and there's one of our veterans coming toward me, and I stopped for a second to talk to him, and I noticed that he had some dental issues. And I started to walk away, and then I stopped, and I was like, hey, let me ask you a question. If you could get that fixed, would you? And he said, oh, I would in a minute if I could afford it. And I told him about this program, and he's been several appointments already. They're working on it. And he and I have been in communication because I want to keep up with what's going on. And I said, I just know that this is going to be life-changing. He's fairly young. So he's, late 30s, early 40s, I think. And it's going to be life-changing for him, because we all know how people look at you if you have bad dental, they make decisions about a person based on the way that their mouth is sometimes. And, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But I know that happens, and sometimes it affects their ability to get jobs and everything else. So imagine how life-changing it is for somebody to go from having a couple of teeth on the bottom and a couple of teeth on the top to having a beautiful smile, and how life-changing that can be for somebody. And I just know this is going to be great. And I'm hoping that once he gets all done, we can get him and the Tuggies on, and maybe a couple other people that they've helped, so that people can see and hear about this life-changing thing that the Tuggies are doing for our veterans, because it really is life-changing.
It is indeed.
Yep. But the luncheon, we talk a lot about the luncheons, and the luncheon is not just a lunch, right? So we also have a program. So after we serve the lunch, then we get a speaker, and most of the time it's one of our veterans. And sometimes, like Rick said, we're able to bring in folks from the outside with the help of American Airlines and their miles. But those stories that they tell, they get about 20-25 minutes to share a story or two, which is not a lot of time. But what's really neat is that they maybe share it there first, and then we get them on this podcast, or we get them on this podcast and we go, hey, they got some really great stories. Let's have them speak at a luncheon. Now they have to bring it way down because they get much more time on the podcast. But, think about the people that have been on the podcast, like, Andrew Tank Gunner. He goes by Tank Gunner, but Colonel Andrew Hudson. And he's been on here, and he talked about the Medal of Honor citation that he wrote, and telling us about things in Vietnam. And then so he spoke at a lunch, and he got to come on the show. We might have had him on here a couple of times.
We had him, we had him on the show, and then you scheduled him for the podcast. The only person that I've ever met, probably you ever met, that actually witnessed a heroic event, where the person received the Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. And Tank wrote that. Plus, he's an author, written so many books. And we've had a lot of authors on the program too, like Doug Peterson.
Right.
And it's thrilled to death to read that book that he wrote, and about the dust off. Mm-hmm. And because I'd flown in the States with a dust off unit, air ambulance unit, and most of the crew members and all the pilots had been to Vietnam. And then to talk to Doug and read his book and find out how all that operated in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And we've had David Huntley on. He was early on, and he's written several books, and he was a speaker at the December roll call.
Right. And Rex Gooch, who we just recently had on, I think I've got him scheduled definitely for May. And if need be, we may be able to move him to April, but we're going to have him, Errol Flannery, the reenactment. We're going to have him on in
a direct descendant of Davy Crockett. Right. And then we have his cousin, and I didn't know it until Errol came to roll call, and he said, "Oh, my cousin, I forgot his name, but he's a direct descendant." And I think in January, February, I'll go down to Granbury because Errol's wife, Heather, she and Errol and the family, and then the DAR, they put together a competition for the kids on Texas history. Great organization. And the kids write, or they have projects about Texas history. So, you don't get to meet, especially somebody from Texas that, grew up going to the Alamo and knowing about Davy Crockett. And then all of a sudden you see their great, how many generations, but their grandsons and their granddaughters. Errol, his daughter's a direct descendant, and she's probably 14 years old or so. So,
It's
But he
amazing.
does a great
Yeah.
reenactment of Davy Crockett.
Yeah, and we've had, golly, there's just so many. Bill Pugh, we've had him on
Four
several,
times.
and the stories, Jim Thomason, of course, Don Graves, we've had him on multiple times, and he's shared his story at roll call. So we've had so many of them on the show so that they can share their stories, but also then they share those at the luncheon, which is really, the meat and potatoes of the luncheon is, first of all, allowing them, they get there at, we had to stop letting them in
at,
earlier and
at
earlier and earlier.
7:30.
They were starting to get there before 9 in the morning for an 11:30 luncheon. So we had to kind of put the kibosh on that, right? That, you can't come in before 9:45 so we can make sure we're set. But there's a line at 9:45 in the morning to get in for an 11:30 luncheon because they want to visit with each other. Then we serve the meal and they visit till about noon when we start the program. And then we share some announcements and all that. And that's when the speaker comes up. So it's really about them sharing their stories. And what we found, so we've had Bill on here and Rex with the book Cav Hat. That was I think one of our last shows, right?
Yeah,
Just a few
yeah,
weeks
just a few
ago.
weeks ago.
And Bill is in that book, but we think about Bill and when he was in Vietnam, and he didn't wear that Cav hat, and he didn't talk about what happened in his experiences in Vietnam until we got him to talk about it at a roll call luncheon. So I talk to people all the time that say, man, I wish I could get my grandpa. I wish I could get my uncle. I wish I could get my dad to come to a lunch because I think it'd do him some good to get out of the house and go be around people. And I say, yeah. And what you may find is that if we could get them to the lunch and they sit and talk to other people and they hear other people share their story, all of a sudden that story isn't so scary anymore. And now it's okay to share it, which is what Bill found is now, oh, heck, you know what? I'm pretty proud of that. I'm especially for our Vietnam veterans because they were not treated well when they came home. And so it wasn't easy for them to feel proud of their service. And now they can say, you know what? Bill is like, I'm wearing this Cav. He's known everywhere by that Cav hat. That's how everybody knows him. Little girl across the street, I shouldn't say little girl because she's like 22, 23 now. But, a few years ago, she was looking at going in the military. And she asked me if I would go with her to the recruiter, talk to the Air Force recruiter. And I did. And she decided to join. I wanted to make sure that nobody was giving her any BS. I wanted her to get all the right answers. And so she's a reservist, but now she's an AGR, an active guard and reserve. But she and I went for a walk. She was home from Arkansas, and I shouldn't say Arkansas, Louisiana. She's stationed at Barksdale, and she was home for a week over the Christmas break. She and I went for a really long walk, and we were just talking, and she's telling me about her grandpa, and he's Vietnam and he won't get out of the house and he really needs to get out of the house. And she said, I just, I love what you're doing. And I got an opportunity to go spend time with vets in Louisiana. And it was so great. And she said, I wish I could get him out of the house. And I said, well, how about this? The next time you're in town, let's make sure that we try to coordinate where you could be here on a Friday of a luncheon. And you could say, hey, Grandpa, I want you to come with me. And then maybe we can get him because I've invited him multiple times, but so maybe if you do it, you get him to come with you. We can get him out of the house, and once he sees that it's not so scary, then maybe he'll be more willing to open up and start sharing. And she was like, "That's a good idea. Let's do
Because
that."
so many of our veterans that have been to war don't talk about it to their family. Their family knows nothing about it.
Right. Right. And so what we hear after they get coming to the luncheons is now they're starting to share, and now they're starting to see that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones that experience that. It gets them out of some of that, um, that depression and some of the other things that come along with it. And so, the goal is always, how do we make them feel like they matter? Because as you have heard me probably say more times than you care to hear, everyone has a story and every story matters. And yes, the combat veterans have a lot of baggage, but a lot of veterans that aren't combat veterans have a lot of baggage from other things that have happened in their lives. And those stories matter. They all matter. And once we help them understand that they matter, that temptation to be one of those 22 a day who commit suicide. And I said that to her about the 22 a day, and she didn't understand. She didn't know what that meant. And I said, well, 22 veterans on average a day commit suicide. And she was shocked. And I said, but that's because of that. They've stuffed all that down for so long. And sometimes it gets so painful and they feel so alone and they feel like this is the best way to get out of that pain. And we don't want that. And so we want to get them out. And, that's that part of, what are we doing this Thursday? The Armed Forces Bowl luncheon, right? Rick and you and I are going. We're going along with 22 other veterans because those folks that operate that Armed Forces Bowl luncheon said, hey, we're going to give you 3 tables. You can bring 24 people. So we're bringing 24 people to go sit at tables at a luncheon. Didn't cost roll call a penny. But we're going to get them out of the house. We got to get people out of the house so they can go to the game. They can go to the luncheon. They can, it's just really about getting them out of the house.
And at the luncheon, Jacob Schick with One Tribe, he's got a tremendous story, United States Marine. He's going to be the keynote speaker at the Armed Forces Bowl luncheon. It may not be too late to get tickets to that. I think they're about $50 a piece. With the tickets to the game, and that's the luncheon's on January the 1st, New Year's Day, down at the Omni Hotel. And then the game the following day, kickoffs at noon at TCU. The Veterans Village opens at 9 o'clock. It's on the east side of the stadium. We have all kinds of organizations that are nonprofit that have a lot of information and a lot of things for veterans. Freedom Mobility, I'm on the board of directors, and we both love Major General Kevin Pottinger and Ann, and they have Freedom Mobility Foundation. We're going to have a great area set up with some of the vehicles that we are going to give, present at the Armed Forces Bowl. And then I know Air Power Foundation will be there. A lot of our other combined arms, I'm sure they'll be there, but that's at 9 o'clock on the 2nd of January. Go to armedforcesbowl.com and veterans can get free tickets. I think they charge a little bit, a couple of dollars or something for doing the deal. And then you can get a parking pass too for $10 or $15, maybe $20. I'm not sure about that. Just go to armedforcesbowl.com because Armed Forces, it's ESPN. It's a big deal. It's not like going to a high school game. It's a for real deal where they've got the lights, camera, action, the 301st.
And the weather's going to be beautiful. It's supposed to be like 70 degrees far from what it was a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. I think it was 14 degrees, and that's about the coldest I've been. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't die.
Yeah.
But the 301st going to have a flyover F-35s, and I talked to General Pottinger, and I'm pretty sure they're going to have the missing man formation. That's not something you see every day, and you have to have special approval from the Department of the Air Force to do that missing man formation. And then the 136th, they're going to be dropping the all veterans team. Let's just hope the wind is not blowing like it was when they had to cancel it as last year or the year before. It's always exciting to see them jump into that field. I don't know how they do it, but I wouldn't want to do it.
No, I wouldn't either, but they love to do it.
And so anyway, that's something that's open to veterans and civilians. And Rice is going to play Texas State, so you got two Texas teams playing, and the Purple Heart at the south end, the Purple Heart of Texas. They'll have probably over 100 Purple Heart recipients. I think that Major General Patrick Brady, he's going to get an award for the work he does. It's just going to be an amazing day. And
yeah. And you know, with the weather being the way it is, you can't beat it. Again, here's opportunities to not sit at home and be alone. Go get out there and have a great time. And you know, when they play the national anthem, be proud, stand up and salute. You know, I get that some people's cultures are, oh, well, I don't want to do that. You know, I'll just put my hand over my heart. If you're a veteran and you're out there, you know what? That is just the greatest thing in the world, to be able to salute when that flag goes up and they play the national anthem. That is one of the things that I absolutely love, is the fact that I get to do that. That is something that I am fortunate enough to get to do.
I know sometimes people might think, I mean, because I wear a ball cap a lot, and so, I'll during the national anthem or the pledge, I'll salute, and if they're looking from the back, they probably, that guy's not taking his hat off. Well, that's a time that you don't have to take your hat off because you're saluting. So
that's right. Yeah, it's perfect. I've had a couple of the vets ask me that. Oh, they say take your hat off, and I said, and if you're saluting, you leave your hat on.
That's right.
So, but if you don't have a hat on, you can still salute as a veteran. You can read the etiquette for that. It's perfectly clear. Not all of us wear hats. So if you're not wearing a hat, it's perfectly acceptable to do it. It's perfectly acceptable to do it indoors as well. So that's just the etiquette for veterans. Now, active duty, they don't follow all those same things. But for a veteran, that's acceptable protocol.
I'm sure the skipper will be there, so
I would imagine, yes.
I think it was like maybe 2 years ago. It was pretty cool, and the skipper. We were inside in that big suite on the west side of the stadium, and so I want to get a picture of he and his family. Well, he had his overcoat on, but it wasn't buttoned because he's inside. Well, I got them all set up, and wait a second, he had. I don't know how many buttons on that coat, but he had to look presentable, so he had to button all those buttons.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about when you're still serving, you got to follow all those rules. That's why, I have red nail polish on, but if I go to do something in uniform, I have to, I can't have red nail polish. In fact, the Air Force changed the rules, and I don't think if I read it right, you can't have nail polish at all. So, which is back to what it was when I was on active duty. So, but you definitely never could have this color red in uniform.
So you got that's a good excuse to go get your nails done again.
I get them done anyway, but people are always like, you're retired. Who's going to say anything or care? And I said, well, I care. And I'm wearing that diamond that says that I'm a first sergeant. And that even more emphasizes that I don't want to set a bad example, because not everybody who sees me out and about, if I go to a funeral or to a ceremony or something, not all of them know. They don't look for the little pin on my lapel that says retired. They see me in a uniform and they see that diamond and they make an assumption. And so you have to remember that you still represent the military and do it to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. And you were talking about uniform, and we were talking earlier about how we have people that we go visit sometime. Mm-hmm. And it's probably been 4 years ago at least. There was that Vietnam veteran. He was in a coma and on hospice, and they reached out, wanted to see if some people would come to visit him at the house. And so we put the word out, and they lived out by Mansfield someplace and kind of had a big lot. there were
And it was
probably,
during COVID.
and there was probably 50 or 60 people that showed up. And I went and presented him with a retired flag, and you did the pinning ceremony. Even though he was comatose, we were still able to honor him and honor his family. And they were so gracious because he had he had done all these models. He'd gone to the VA, and he liked motorcycles, and he had done all these big motorcycle
Yeah, they were.
models. And they started bringing them out, and they said, "We want veterans to have these motorcycles." So, I
Mhm.
mean, that was a very special
It
thing.
was, and
And
they
you were,
brought him, you remember they wheeled him to the window, and it was a little bit of a chilly day. It was a little bit of a chilly time of the year, and they wheeled him to the window. You and I were inside,
yeah,
and all the veterans, because of COVID, they were outside, and they were lined up around this window where they brought him, and they kind of made a semicircle, and they sang Amazing Grace. And that really, I had a hard time fighting the tears back. And I was in uniform, and we were doing this presentation for him, and it was so special.
it
That was
was.
really
And
special.
Matt Tuggy was there. He came out there. There was a lot of roll call people that came out there that day to honor that veteran. So that's just some of the things that roll call
Yeah.
does to honor veterans. But the Armed Forces Bowl is January the 2nd. Still time to get tickets, armedforcesbowl.com. Then we've in February, well, January the 23rd, we have roll call. And who's going to be the speaker?
Our speaker, gosh, now I got to remember who is our speaker in January. Let me look again. Why can't I? Oh, I know what it is, because we don't have necessarily have a speaker. We have a couple of different presentations that are going to happen. So we have had a couple of different groups. So there's a couple of, I guess, the quilts of valor. There's different organizations or different chapters or something that do those presentations, and we happen to have a couple of them reach out to us at the same time wanting to do a presentation at a luncheon to different veterans. So I think we're going to have 2 or 3 veterans who will be receiving quilts of valor, and that is a really big deal. And so we didn't want it to be like you got 5 minutes to get this done before we have our speaker, because on top of that, there's a presentation that's going to be made to Carla Wicks. Carla, of course, is an Air Force veteran, but she's also a Gold Star mom. And so that was going to be about a 15-minute presentation to explain everything, what this was and all of it. So we thought that why don't we combine those and do those all at one time so that they get the honor that they deserve. So we're going to do that in January. So instead, in lieu of having a speaker, it will be pretty cool, I think,
I think so too.
to see that, because they don't get to see that all the time.
And we've done things like that in the past. I mean, I think this year we had the pinning ceremony for the Vietnam veterans, and Carla was the one that uh, kind of ran that program, and were able to pin those veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And then, several years ago when you retired, we had the retirement ceremony there.
Mm-hmm.
And so people could see how it is whenever you retire from the Air Force.
Yep. We've done all kinds of stuff. We had when Captain to Major Jessica Gross, she did her pinning ceremony at a luncheon, because the veterans they love that stuff. So really, really neat. So that luncheon is the 23rd. The RSVPs will open on the 12th. So I always recommend do your RSVP that day. If you have trouble, you can reach out to us through the info at roll call, or you can call the phone number and we will get on the phone and walk you through it, however much time that takes to get you through it. Or get one of your anytime I have trouble with technology, you get one of my grandkids. The 2 that live closest are 10 and 12, but they know more about how to make the technology work than I do. So call one of your grandkids, have them help you.
It's not as complicated as people make it. It's pretty easy.
Yep.
And I know you spend a lot of time at a lot of luncheons going over it and over it. So
Yeah. 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 Because a lot of people register for one seat and then they put two people in it. And I always like to tease them about, unless that person's sitting in your lap, but no, really, you can only have so many people in the hall. And it doesn't matter if they're eating or not eating or they're a volunteer, or it doesn't matter. Everybody has to register. And God forbid something awful happened. And, we never want that to happen. But if it did, we need to know who was in that building. So
right.
that's always very, very important to us to make sure we know it. And speaking of January 12th, the first annual Nathan Gage Ingram Day, honoring him, is going to be January 12th from 7 to 10 at the Roanoke Live Tavern Oak Street Cafe. So we've got that flyer out, and it's all over Facebook too. So another one of our Gold Star families will be involved with that. But Jimmy Polizani, who is, I think we've had Jimmy on here too. Jimmy
Not yet. He skated out. I got to get him.
But he's involved in this one, so it'd be a great thing for people to go out there and
I think that's their new restaurant. I think that's
it is in Roanoke. Mm-hmm.
And then this fella, he was a Navy SEAL, and year before last,
Mm-hmm.
I think they were going to board a boat or something, and one of them fell in, and the other SEAL went after him, and they never recovered their bodies. So, and one of the families, the Gage family, is local.
Right. And his mom, God bless her, she came and spoke at that one luncheon, and I don't know how she did it so close to the time of losing him. I don't think I could do it, but she was eloquent and gracious, and
And they presented him a portrait at Skyball that artist had painted, and it was a very touching ceremony.
Yeah, for sure. So, lots of good things coming up. There's if you go out to our Facebook page, you probably find the military wellness workshop that's going to come up in January. There's a place to register for that. That will be at the American Legion in Benbrook. And then what do we got after that?
February the 2nd.
Woohoo!
County Commissioner Manny Ramirez, and along with the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, it's Military Appreciation Day at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. And that day, veterans get in free. And I think Manny said, and I talked to him, I did an interview with him at Larry's bike giveaway, and he said parking was going to be no charge for veterans.
Yeah, I know they were trying to work on that, because some of our vets were like, yeah, but it cost me $20 to park.
But it was a great, every year it gets bigger and better with all the different.
For lunch right next door.
Yep. And then you have all the different organizations. So you come there and then spend the day at the stock show. And if you were fortunate enough to get some of the free tickets to the rodeo, you can go to the rodeo that night, and they have a great presentation at the rodeo honoring our veterans.
We had last year, you and I went through and did a live broadcast while all the booths were set up and everybody was there, and they were passing out tickets for folks to, if
that's right,
tickets, they were passing out tickets for the rodeo that night. So, come out, you pre-register. That's the best thing to do, is pre-register. But gosh, there were people there registering folks for the PACT Act. There were VA reps from all the different organizations, Texas Veteran Network, AKA Combined Arms, Texas Veterans Commission, Tarrant County.
Lot up to live. Our friends from Dallas, they were there, and they had door prizes, and they drew my name, and I got one of those light therapy systems from Light Up to Live. So
Nice.
life is good.
Good to get that.
And
But
we'll do that again this year too. We'll have a Facebook Live or whatever, interview some of the people there, some of our veterans, and
yeah, anything that you might need, they have there. So you can, it's a one-stop shop, and you get your voucher to go get $10 off your lunch, and hopefully, yes, parking will be free. And so what a deal. And like you said, veterans go, get into the stock show for free. So you go and enjoy the day, and hopefully we get good weather. And it's just a really neat thing that they do for veterans.
So I can't wait for that. That's February 2nd. February the
honoring. So they're going to be honoring. I think it's 7 or 8 veterans that night at the rodeo. So Don Graves, Carlisle Hayes, and Ray Doss. Ray of Carlisle and Don are both World War II. Ray is World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And then they'll be honoring several others from other eras. So we'll have, Doug Peterson, Vietnam, Marquita. We all know Marquita Foxworth. She's very, very involved in a lot of different things. I'm trying to remember who else. Kara Martin. So she's a more recent veteran. And then there's a couple that I have got to look up. Byers and Scott are their last names. And so different generations and different veterans. So they'll be honoring 8. And 6 out of the 8 are roll call veterans. And we love that they're getting this opportunity to get out there and be honored.
That's a great day and a great evening.
Lorna, that's another one of those things that our friend Lorna has really done year after year after year.
Yep. And then February the 7th, out at Abilene, Texas, is the annual, I think it's the 39th annual TET reunion. And you don't have to be a Vietnam veteran that was in TET. It's open to all veterans. And, it's a little drive out there, but if you plan your trip right, stop at Thurber for breakfast. At my favorite place is the New York Hill restaurant. They've got a great omelet that's made out of hash browns, and then go out there. It's free to the public, free to veterans, and they really roll out the red carpet for the veterans there at the TET Offensive reunion. Then on the way back, stopping strong at Mary's Cafe, home of the famous chicken fried steak, which if you watch Landman, that's where they ate the other day. So on Landman.
Wow, so. Nice.
But just make that a good day. So, this year has been a great year, 2025. We're looking forward to 2026. And bringing you a lot more of our hometown heroes.
Yep. And in April, Roll Call is going to have our first ever car show and passport run. So April 11th, we are looking for folks that love to bring their vehicles to car shows, register, come out, support us. It's going to be a fundraiser for us. Going to be the passport run is neat, because we're getting sponsors. We're trying to get sponsors online and get them, especially if they're in the neighborhood of where the car show is going to be, which is going to be up in the north, like right there where 820 and 35, all in that area. It'll be up in that area, and get people so that for the passport run, the folks that register for that will get a little booklet, and they'll have to go to these different businesses and get their stamps. And when they get it all filled up, they'll be entered into a drawing for 50,000 American Airlines miles. And, people think, oh, well, that's not that many. Well, you can fly round trip a lot of places in the States for 15 to 20,000. So, 2 people with 50,000 miles could fly a lot of places in the States and have a round trip ticket that's paid for with those miles. So there's a lot of opportunities going on with that, but you can see our website or go to our Facebook page and all that is on there if you want to register for any part of that.
That'll be a fun day.
I think it will be a lot of fun. Yep.
Well, Mary, we made another year, almost a couple of days away. We'll be at the Armed Forces Bowl luncheon, the Armed Forces Bowl game. Come and see us at Roll Call and the stock show and rodeo. And then in April at this car show. And then, we've got a whole bunch of roll calls in next year. Got trips to the Ranger game and places like that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on.
That's right. And have a happy new year from Rick and I. We wish you that. And, if you don't, I'm not one for resolutions, but if you are, make a resolution to get more movement. Movement is medicine. So even if tomorrow you walk 50 steps, if you haven't walked at all, and then the next day you walk 100 steps, it's not about putting on running shoes and going out and changing the world, but movement is medicine.
Movement's key.
Well,
I'll have to tell you a war story, because whenever I was in the Army, I was stationed in Monterey, California, in Monterey Bay. And, these whales would beach sometime and they die whenever they beach. And we had a surgeon, and he was just a stickler for getting his patients up and walking. And he'd always say, you know what happens to a beach whale? They die. So get your butt out of bed, get your butt out of your chair, and start moving.
Yep, and that's how you don't sit and watch life pass you by in your later years, but you go and you enjoy it and enjoy that time with the kids and the grandkids and everything else. So movement is medicine. Let's make 2026 a great year.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week on Hometown Heroes.